Hi, my name is Tom Gordon. I'm a recording engineer, producer, and educator from Reno, Nevada. I know, weird, right? I'm based out of here in Reno, but I'm a graduate from the recording arts program at USC. I graduated in 91, came back to Reno, and since then I am now the chief engineer for the band Whitesnake at David Coverdale's studio, Hook City. I'm the chief engineer at a independent studio in Nevada called Emirage Sound Labs, which is the longest running commercial studio in the state. And I'm the recording arts professor at the University of Nevada, Reno. Here on Breaking the Biz podcast.
Stay tuned for today's episode of Breaking the Biz, an informative podcast where we dive into the world of entertainment by interviewing seasoned professionals who have made their mark in the industry. Gain invaluable insights as they share their personal journeys, offering advice on navigating the dynamic landscape of the entertainment industry. Whether you're an aspiring actor, musician, filmmaker, author, animator, or any creative soul, tune in for expert career guidance, insider tips, and first-hand accounts on breaking into the entertainment industry. Get ready to unlock the secrets behind successful careers and fuel your own passion for the limelight. Please remember to like this video and to subscribe to our channels for more great conversations.
Greetings from Breaking the Biz, brought to you by Yes I Can Unity Through Music and Education. I'm William Felber, your navigator through the intriguing universe of the entertainment industry, as revealed by the visionaries and creators who bring it to life. Stay tuned as we delve into diverse insights from the forefront of entertainment, hearing from pioneers, creators, and agents of change. Prepare for a journey filled with tales of innovation, resilience, and the undying quest for artistic brilliance.
I want to welcome everyone to Breaking the Biz. I'm extremely excited, and we are fortunate to have time with Tom Gordon, who is a music producer, has an extremely rich background in doing everything. As he shared, a music producer, an engineer, an educator. He's worked with Ozzy Osbourne, Dr. Dre, the Beach Boys, Willie Nelson. His work spans various genres. It's very unique to find someone who can handle everything from rock, classic, metal, hip hop, working with Ice Cube. I mean, it is insane when we kind of we'll go down memory lane and hear how he's worked with so many amazing people. On top of that, he's won an Emmy Award, the effect of 100's Beautiful Mind, which is an award for outstanding educators in Northern Nevada. He has a commitment to music, to education, and that's obviously evident in what he's doing with giving back to us and giving back as an educator in the college. But Tom, I want to thank you for joining us, and I want to know, when were you first exposed to music? Like, when did you just fall in love with
First
music?
off, thank you for having me. Secondly, everyone who's here, thank you everyone who's chimed in. I'm glad you guys came to join us today. Thank you so much. I know I'm not an A-lister, but I appreciate you taking the time to be attentive. I was born in a musical family. My parents were involved in like musical theater, and my dad was a light man and said don't do lights, so here I am not doing lights. So first time I did something that recording engineers do, where you listen to the same song over and over again, was like Easter in the fourth grade. I was given a 45 of the song Convoy, and it was this really silly song about CB radios, and I was really into CB radios, and I played that 145 over and over again for about 7 hours that day. And I became obsessed with listening to the same song, which is part of the requirement for anyone being a sound engineer. You can't get sick of a song, especially in 7 hours. That's just when it's getting interesting, when you're crafting music. So that was my first clue. But my father, who worked at one of the showrooms here in Reno as a light person, and he was a light person for the stars, the Rat Pack. He did spotlights for Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., all these folks. So we got a hand-me-down reel-to-reel tape recorder from the club, and I was just fascinated. It's like, so the tape is like a cassette tape. It was like, there's tape on a reel, and somehow sound gets stuck on this piece of plastic with rust glued to one side. How does that work? So I was just obsessed with this tape recorder, and I started recording all my friends in my garage and recording my own audition tapes to get into schools and stuff. And I just thought the process was amazing. And I went to USC on a percussion scholarship, but I switched to recording arts. It was a brand new program when I was the 13th person to enroll in that program when it was created, and went into the whole percussion production realm instead of the percussion.
So talk me through, that takes me back tape to tape, reel to reel, right? Was that what they were teaching when you got into the engineering aspect at USC?
As a matter of fact, it was. I was the last generation of recording students that learned 100% analog technology. And that meant 2-inch multi-track tape machines on very large framed SSL consoles. And as many people have joked, the University of Southern California is often referred to as the University of Spoiled Children. It's the University of Social Connections as well. We had one of these giant SSL consoles there, and miraculously there was this amazing studio in Reno that had just been built called Granny's House, which was meant to be a bed and breakfast 8-bedroom 2-studio complex that people could come work at their grandma's house before home studios were as prevalent as they are now. And so we had the same tape machine and console at USC as they had at Granny's house. So as soon as I graduated, they're like, you know this desk? You know that tape machine? We need help. Yes, that's how you get the gig. And same thing, I'm also the private engineer for Michael of the Beach Boys, and I knew his console because we had it at Granny's house. And his is a Neve desk that was the broadcast console of the Grand Ole Opry. And so the fact that I was the only person in Northern Nevada who knew how to fly this thing, he's like, you're our guy. Come here now. I'm like, okay. So yeah, it was really fortunate understanding this kind of vintage technology. And I try to teach as many people about it before that knowledge base vanishes forever. We still have a 2-inch Ampex machine at Emirage and all these different formats, and we do a lot of transfers for folks so they don't lose their analog masters. But boy, what a pain in the butt. So all you students there who have never had to align a tape machine, thank your lucky stars that you haven't had to waste the hour of your life with a tweaker aligning every channel. It's about 250 calibrations to align an analog tape machine before you can hit record. So that was supposed to happen at the beginning of every session. So every time Dr. Dre came to Reno, I had to align his tape machine and calibrate it for the 50 reels of tape that were shipped up from Los Angeles and make sure that all the levels were going to be consistent to the tape machine that this stuff was started on at Skip Saylor in Los Angeles or at Dre's home studio. So now you just open up your DAW and everything shows up calibrated. There's no alignment process at all. So one thing I teach is, yes, analog tape has a vibe. Analog tape has a tone that is very fun, but it also is a very expensive boutique filter. And if you can afford it, more power to you.
I feel like you have to be one of those really large bands who have that bankroll to go, oh yeah, let's do let's go analog and do it old school.
So yeah, have fun, Dave Grohl.
Yeah, that's the type of person I was thinking. Yeah. So it just shows you how technology has advanced, and you mentioned your plugins, everything's ready to go. Obviously the work that you guys do and the knowledge you have, you mentioned everyone has a studio now and everyone feels like they could be their own producer, and that's obviously not the case when you actually work with someone who knows the ins and the outs and can make you sound like this to make you sound like that. So there is a reason why AI can do certain things, but that ear, that human is still needed. I also love how you were the one who knew how to do the reel to reel, and you got a job right out of school, because a lot of people think, oh, I graduate and a job is going to just drop on me. You mentioned USC.
I lucked out immensely.
100% on that. But you mentioned something else that's important. When you are in college, the networking and working around people is very key because you never know and I'm sure you've had a long career. You've probably come back and, rekindled relationships, or people have reached out to you, said, I was also at USC. I'm just curious if you could kind of talk about some of the doors that maybe have opened, or doors you opened for others, just based off of networking just from college.
So I was the first person to create a USC chapter of the Audio Engineering Society. Well, I was part of a team that created it, and the person who I did it with, who's another engineer, Ray Silva, I went to school with. He and I actually have been friends for 30 years. He moved to Reno 15 years ago, and we are the ones now building the recording arts program at UNR. And since we came from the exact same school, there's no daylight between our opinions on how to build this program. So that has been a relationship I've been fostering for 30 years. In about an hour, I'm about to see another friend of mine from USC who started an independent record label in New Jersey and the longest running independent Americana music festival in the US that lasted 23 years that I was the stage manager for. He's coming to visit Reno, and he's going to be here right after we finish this. You may have heard of a filmmaker named Bryan Singer, who did The Usual Suspects, the X-Men films, Bohemian Rhapsody. He was the creator of the TV show House. He was my neighbor my freshman year at USC, and we've been friends since school. So many relationships I made in college with like-minded people in the recording arts department has lasted to this day and become career shaping relationships. Between all the acts I worked with at Black Potato, these were, it was an indie festival, but you couldn't be signed to play our festival, but a lot of famous people's side projects played there. So we had members of the Allman Brothers and the band and Bare Naked Ladies doing their little fun side projects. And you're like, I never would have had Peter Gabriel's rhythm section played our band, but Peter wasn't there. I'm like, okay, these are all just A-listers that I also made relationships with. So the networking's enormous. It's trade shows like the NAMM show or the Audio Engineering Society convention were the staples on where I would find people of similar interest and start networking with them. Because, boy, if you are the only audio nerd or music nerd in the room, you run out of friends quickly, don't you? And you're like, I'm really into this, and none of your friends are like, well, we're happy for you. And there are a lot of friends I grew up with who went different directions, and in fact, we were playing Dungeons and Dragons with two of my friends growing up, and I got a phone call from my first internship at a recording studio. I'm like, guys, I gotta go. My career just called me, and this was my first foray. It was my first official internship into a gig, and it's not like I loved my friends any less, but my calling showed up, and I had to go take it.
Let's talk about your calling, because obviously it's music. So you are able to do the reels. That's your first job. Talk me through how you get to some of these acts, and kind of that progression. I know we could probably talk an entire 24 hours with the amount of bands that you have worked with, but I want to hear some stories from Ozzy, rest in peace. I want to
Yep.
hear some Ice Cube and some Dr. Dre for sure.
Yep. Well, that was all
You know,
thanks to the studio, because back in the early 90s, you still had to travel to a commercial studio to get really professional recordings, especially very good drum tones. You really didn't have portable electronics yet, the way we have it now, with a good sounding room all in one place. So now you can show up with a laptop and a drum set in a good room and get a great drum recording. That was not nearly as easy back then. So we had this gorgeous room, and people who were trying to get away from their distractions at home would come take a little vacation and record at our studio. So the first gig I did there, and some of you who will know who this is, some of you will not, was a group called Milli Vanilli. So for those of you who are going, oh God, yeah, you're right, that is the correct response. For those of you who are not familiar with Milli Vanilli, they were the fourth highest selling act in history at that time. Two gorgeous African-American guys who who danced and lip synced. They won the Grammy for Best New Artist in 1991, and then had to give their Grammy back when it was discovered that they were lip syncing. And unfortunately, the people at our studio were the only people dumb enough to take those two on to do an actual follow-up album with them singing. And so when I asked my first day at Granny's house, and it's like, so who were you working with? And they said Milli Vanilli. I thought they were joking. I laughed out loud. And they're like, no, really. And I'm like, oh geez, love Milli Vanilli, best band ever. Yeah, let's do Milli Vanilli. And to be honest, that has been the gift that keeps on giving. There's been a VH1 Behind the Music on Milli Vanilli that I'm in, and then the Paramount Plus feature film about Milli Vanilli that came out a year and a half ago. I'm in the end of that too. And I'm still very good friends with Fabrice. Rob Platus unfortunately took his own life about 15 years ago. So that was, hey, I learned a very important thing on that record. There was almost $500,000 in studio time that was never paid for. It was meant to be recouped on the sales of the record, which is called a spec deal. So if you're entering into a project with somebody and they're like, well, we only have like $10 for you to do your time now, but man, we're going to give you points on the record on the back end. There's no guarantee there's a back end, so you're like, all right, well, I'm going to donate. So we donated 10 months of studio time and totaling almost $500,000. And then that management team kind of got pulled over for doing naughty things. And then that studio was left holding a bill for almost $500,000 that no one ever paid. And the album came out off of a bootleg and sold 2,000 copies worldwide and tanked. So woohoo, good times. That was a good opening volley into the recording industry. And I learned that don't do spec deals. Then followed that was the Nelson twins, for those of you who might have remember the long-haired Nelson twins. So clearly we had a hair requirement for a while. Right after that, we had Boyz II Men. We did Boyz II Men's second album. So I did 50 Candles and that cover of Yesterday with them. And they're the ones who turned me on to Snapple. That was on their writer. I'd never heard of Snapple before. And they're like, oh, you got to try this. And it's like, can't imagine Snapple was ever a new product, but it was, and Boyz II Men turned me onto it. Then we had Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden. We did a solo album of his called Balls to Picasso, and Bruce is an astonishing musician. I almost got Bruce to sing a jingle for a local hardware store. That's my ultimate fish that got away story. And then we had Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard doing an all-star country song for Special Olympics. With Merle Haggard, Hoyt Axton, Johnny Rodriguez, and Freddie Powers that I got to engineer. And, I know this is an educational scenario, but I can say that I've turned down marijuana from the two greatest sources in the music industry, Willie Nelson and Dr. Dre. I've had someone kick me when I've said that. But I was trying to mix the song and I only had 45 minutes to mix the song. And the producer, the writer, Freddie Powers, is saying to Willie right over my shoulder, "Those boys smoke." And I don't know, that's what was Willie. And Freddie's like, "I don't know. I haven't asked him." So Willie comes up and goes, "Want some, son?" And I'm like, "I'm trying to mix your song." Thanks. Then we had Michael Martin Murphey, another country legend. And then we did voiceover works with like Peter Graves and Cliff Robertson and Richard Crenna. It was the only production house in a small market. So everything came to us because there weren't other options in Northern Nevada. So that's why I had these weird smatterings. But then the big one comes, Dr. Dre. He's trying to get away from all his distractions at home. They put this giant SSL in his house and he can never get to it because his phone calls and his family and it's his distraction. So when he booked the studio, he was working on a King T record and trying to kind of try out the facility. And he came to Reno with an entire entourage of like 16 people that didn't fit in our studio. So they had to book a hotel and then do rental trucks to vans to get to us. And when you meet Dr. Dre, you are assigned a nickname. And you can't tell with me it right now, but I'm 6'8". I'm very tall. And back when I met Dre, my hair was down to here in 1998. And this is around the same time Howard Stern had hit the scene as the new shock jock, right? And the movie Private Parts had just come out. So Dre looks at me and goes, "You're Stern." And I'm like, "What? No, no, I don't want to be Stern." But as luck would have it, I became Stern. So in the hip hop world, that became my nickname. And I'm like, oh geez, okay. And the head engineer looked like the actor Steven Seagal, so he was nicknamed Seagal. Richard Huerdia, who would be another person to have on your show here. So we did one session for King T, and he loved it. He's like, we got a lot of work done. A lot of work done. We'll be back. So he came back 3 more times to work on the 2001 album. And Eminem came up 6 months before they dropped the Slim Shady record to do his feature on It's the DRE before he was Eminem. So it was like, oh, this is our new artist, Marshall. He's going to be really big in 6 months. And we're like, oh, well, hope so. Good luck, Marshall. You know, it's like, and then
should have done this. Should have done the spec deal on Eminem.
Yeah, right, exactly. And it was funny. Dre predicted that 2001 was going to ship platinum, meaning that there was going to be over 1 million pre-orders for that album in the various formats of cassette, CD, and vinyl. And he was right, because he's a smart cookie, that Andre. And then they came back one more time to work on the Eminem show, but I wasn't on that date. I'd already gone freelance and moved forward. But the story, there is one Dr. Dre story that I always tell my students and my clients, is it was around this time, 1999, that they were in Reno working on the album, and there's a co-producer. Oh, I should ask you, can we drop swear words?
Yeah, you're good.
I'll be quoting for historical accuracy.
100%.
Okay, great. So October, and what they didn't know about me, and you guys don't know about me, is I'm a huge fanatic of the Halloween films. So I imagine there's a few fans in the class that love Michael Myers and the Halloween films, right? And yeah, I have the full costume. I had a custom mask made, and I actually auditioned to play Michael in Rob Zombie's 2007 reboot of the Halloween franchise. So I do Michael very well. And so I was asking the co-producer Mel Mann, is like, are you guys a fan of horror films? And they're like, oh yeah, Stern, we love horror films. And I said, well, are you a fan of the Halloween franchise? And they're like, oh, Michael Myers, oh yeah, that shit's scary, Stern. I'm like, oh well, I may have a surprise for you. And they're like, oh really, what's that? And I said, oh, you'll know. So 2 days before Halloween, I show up to the studio with my costume, and I go to the bodyguard, who was this former Marine drill sergeant named Sarge, who was also the chef. So he was in the kitchen cooking dinner for everyone. And I said, okay, chef, it's just me. No guns, all right? And he's like, oh, go ahead, Stern, have fun. So the studio at Granny's house was enormous. The huge 14-foot long SSL console with this giant room around it that all 16 people in his entourage could fit in the control room. And so Dre, who is a great engineer, is pushing faders. They were just recording a vocal, so they had in our giant tracking room with a vocal mic setup, and the bass player, the guitar player, the keyboard player, they're all in the control room listening on speakers, so they don't have to wear headphones, so they can groove with the track on speakers. And then everyone else is there listening to this playback of a vocal they just cut. And I put on the Michael Myers costume, and I go into the incredibly dark tracking room, and there are a bunch of baffles around a vocal mic, and I stand half obscured behind one of the baffles at an extreme diagonal, and all I can see is Dr. Dre at the console doing a rough mix, and 2 other people who are not paying attention. And about 2 or 3 minutes later, eventually Dre sees me. He's like pushing faders, looks up, and he's like, to the other people who are off axis. And I'm like, this is my chance. So when Dre turned away, I ducked out into the hallway. So when he turned back around, I had vanished. It was perfect. And so I started walking down the hallway, And I hear this way, Michael, Michael, from the control room. So I count to three, and due to my long wingspan, I was able to open the door, and to them, it looked like it opened by itself. So I open the door, and the place falls silent, right? I count to three, I right face into the room, and the place explodes. Half of them are screaming, half of them are laughing their heads off. And the bass player, the fabulous Mike Alfonso, who now produces Christina Aguilera, throws his bass off and starts running away between the analog tape machine and the outboard island and sofas full of people. And I'm like, someone grab the bass. Please, that's an expensive device. Grab the bass. So, or Olympic or something. I can't remember what it was, but the guitar player grabbed the bass. And Mike is not waiting. He is getting the hell out of there. And I do the logical thing. I chase him, right? So I'm doing the Myers walk. I'm totally gaining on him. And all these people are in his way on the sofa. And then he gets around to the DJ gear and all the rental synthesizers. And he's in a hurry, but he's not going to knock anything over. But he's really trying to get the hell out of there. And I'm just making the curves and catching up to him. And finally, there's a straight shot between the synthesizers and the door, between the outboard gear and Dre at the desk. And Mike sprints to the studio door. And we've done a full loop basically behind the control room. And at this point, Dr. Dre has stood up and is watching all this transpire behind him. And right when Mike gets to the door and gets out, I am like neck and neck to Dre. So he's looking this way and I'm marching this way. And as soon as I get I right face and I just look down on Dre, nose to sternum. Probably not the smartest thing I've ever done, but I'm like 2 inches away from Dre dressed as Michael Myers. And Dr. Dre looks up to me and says, "These words I will take to the grave." Ah, shit, Stern. Left face, walk out. I never break character when I'm dressed in the costume, unless there's police involved, obviously. Went and took the mask off in the bathroom, went to the kitchen and told Sarge what he missed, and he was very bummed because, I should have gone in there. So after 5 minutes of recanting the story, I go back into the control room, standing ovation. And Melman, the producer, is like, "That wasn't scary, Stern. People with guns in the parking lot of Skip Sale. That shit's scary." I'm like, I get it. Fine. But they started writing a beat that had the Halloween theme in it. The John Carpenter, which is originally in 5/4. So rapping in 5/4 doesn't flow quite as well, right? So they swung it. I'm like, well, that's cool. That's way cool. But it's not going to see a lot of day. We worked on over 40 songs in that period of time, one of which was sold to Ice Cube, which is why I'm on the Ice Cube album. I never met Cube, but my credit transferred when they sold the song. But a year later, when everything was finished and I went and picked up my copy, it's track 15, Murder Inc. That's how Murder Inc. became Murder Inc. on 2001, was me showing up as Michael Myers and scaring everyone. So that's my contribution to pop culture.
That is, I was going to say, one of the coolest stories. I was hoping that it wasn't going to turn into a punch from Dr. Dre, or him going, is this a Suge Knight moment? Like,
Dre has the best sense of humor. He is a sweetheart, and he is so impressive to watch produce. He's kind of a ringleader trying to coordinate all these very talented people, and he just surrounds himself with the best team. It's very impressive. But he has a good sense of humor. Like, to that point, I showed up and he started. Everyone's calling me Stern, and if you haven't seen the movie Private Parts, they always refer to the call letters of the radio station, WNBC, because that's the way Stern was told how to say it. I didn't know it. I hadn't seen the film. And after about a day of awkward laughing, he's like, "Stern, have you not seen Private Parts?" I go, "I'm sorry, Dr. Dre, I have not." He's like, Larry, his assistant. His personal assistant comes up and goes, "Get Private Parts for Stern." Now, this is before the internet, right? This guy has to go find a VHS copy of Private Parts in a town he doesn't know without the internet. And he was back in 20 minutes with the VHS tape. That's why he was Dre's guy, right? And So I have my copy of Private Parts that Dr. Dre bought me, and there was a jazz fusion group I was listening to called Naked City that had and protocol. If you're ever working with an artist at the level of Dr. Dre or all these people, it is best practice not to listen to other people's music when you're working on theirs. That's just a courtesy to the artist. And unless the artist asks you to pull something else up, that's fine. But I was doing a late night cleanup after a session till 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was listening to my own tunes after everyone left, but I forgot to put the disc away at the end of the night. And this album covers a cadaver head on a plate. It's a pretty brutal jazz fusion group called Naked City, fronted by John Zorn. And Dr. Dre looks at this and goes, "Stern, what the hell is this?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Dre. It's a jazz group called Naked City." He's like, "No, Stern, what the fuck is this?" I'm like, "You're right. I'm sorry." So as his farewell gift, I bought him a copy of that CD and I left it on the console for him the morning of the last session. And he's like, "Oh, Stern, you shouldn't have." I'm like, "Oh, really? You shouldn't have." I thought it was funny. Oh well.
That is a great story. So you work with all these artists. You mentioned moving on to doing, at this time, is this all at Granny's house? And then do
Still
you,
Granny's house. Yeah.
okay,
Yep.
talk me through the transition to, what you're doing now.
Right. So a big thing is I discovered around that time that I if I had to compromise my morals to support someone else's morals, that's not a good position to be in. And there was someone involved in the organization that I felt I was compromising my ethics to support theirs. And I had built up enough of a reputation for myself where I was like, the scariest thing to do once you've had a regular gig for 7.5 years is to go freelance. And in a market as small as Reno, unlike Los Angeles, where there's many studios there and a lot of production, there wasn't. There's only 3 commercial studios in Reno, and I'm leaving the biggest one. And I'm like, but home studios are growing at this point. ADATs are kind of big still, and D88s and Pro Tools is just beginning to hit the common pulse of music production. So I took a big jump and I went back to a studio I recorded to when I was a kid and found the owner, and he's like, "Oh, I remember you. I recorded you when you were 15. Yeah. Well, if you think you can book the studio, we'll give it a facelift." And based on a handshake, I made a new partnership with this Dr. Lawrence Davis, who built this studio initially in 1978 in downtown Reno. And when it was in that location, there was a song that was in a movie called from the movie Endless Love that also ended up in Happy Gilmore, called Endless Love. The vocals for Endless Love was recorded at Dr. Davis's studio in Reno because Diana Ross was performing at the club my dad was working at at Harrah's. And if you were on contract with Harrah's for a week, you could not leave town, and they needed her vocal. So they flew Lionel Richie up to Reno with the tapes to record at what was called Sunwood at the time in 1980. That partnership dissolved. And that's the only Academy Award nominated song recorded in Reno, by the way. But then he moved it to a different facility in our sister city, Sparks, in 1982. And it's now the longest running commercial studio in the state at 43 years. And it's a mid-size room. It's half the size of Granny's house. And I was like, wow, I got to get used to the acoustics of this space because I'm so used to the other one. And we had to do a full remodel of the room, and I was doing some live sound in between at the casinos while we were doing the rebuild. And I found out that live sound is a very different beast than studio sound, and I don't like doing it. Some people love the adrenaline of mixing a live show because there's no going back and take twoing it. You're like, you get it or you don't. And if you're a monitor engineer, part of your skill set is feedback abatement and trying to get rid of feedback during a show. And some people think it's the greatest bug hunt in the world, and then they're like, "Oh, I hear it. What frequency is that? 500." Nailed it. They try to beat their time, personal best on, I got rid of feedback in 5 seconds, that kind of thing. And I'm like, that wasn't fun. I was just mad that I had feedback, and I'm like, get me back in the studio as soon as I can. And boy, having the right person who you are aligned with morally has led to a 25-year relationship and business with him uh, that has gone on as I started the university gig and this gig with Whitesnake. So I'm talking to you right now from a studio that belongs to the artist David Coverdale. And some of you may not be familiar with his work, but he was the lead singer, or is the lead singer and the name owner of the band Whitesnake, which was a very big band in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, but has been ongoing ever since. And he moved to Reno in 88, or more specifically Lake Tahoe, as many do, because the tax structure. We do not have a state tax in Nevada. So a lot of businesses leave California and come here so they don't have to pay the extra taxes. And David, much like Mike Love of the Beach Boys and Doug Clifford of Creedence Clearwater Revival, have all come here for the same. Jeremy Renner, the actor Jeremy Renner, is about 4 miles away from me, up the hill, because of the tax benefits of being in Nevada. So we built a studio here for basically Whitesnake restoration and reissues. And last week was the release of our final reissue with Warner Brothers and Rhino, making box sets of every one of David's albums, where one disc is the original mix that's been remastered. The second disc is a remix that Chris and I would work on. And then the third disc would be like the demos and live outtakes and alternate versions. And some of the stuff, we took the old songs that we're recording, we're adding new string parts to it with live string players and stuff like that. And then there's a disc called Evolutions, where it's a medley of the first 90 seconds of the first demo that goes into 90 seconds of the first pre-production recording, into the 90 seconds of the first rough mix, into 90 seconds of the last mix before the final mix. So you can hear how the song grows from its infant stage to its penultimate stage, that we nicknamed Evolution. So we have an Evolutions medley of every song, which I stole completely from Peter Gabriel off his So box set. He had the same thing called DNA. And the Beatles did that on the anthology, but I don't know which came first, the So box set or the anthology. So we stole it from somebody. And then we have a Blu-ray of all the music videos, some live stuff from that tour, a book, a 60-page book of an interview with David and magazine articles from that era, a story of what was going on in that area, all the credits, all the lyrics. And I have to proofread the book. We have usually a poster of the album cover and a recreation of the tour program from that tour, whenever that tour happened. And it's about a $60 to $80 box set. And David's fans who were, he was also the lead singer of Deep Purple, the third incarnation of the band Deep Purple, David was the lead singer of. So due to a 50-year career fan base, his people are the people who still buy physical media. They will still buy vinyl. They'll still buy a box set. Where I could probably ask a show of hands, has anyone in this room bought a CD in the last year? No. Exactly.
Nope.
Thank you. You just proved my point. Thank you very much. So it's a very target audience now that's still buying that kind of physical media. So we are finishing this multi. So we've done 11 box sets over the last 10 years here. And now that gig is kind of wrapping up, and Nevada is getting more film production. So I'm kind of facing a new transition, because as this Whitesnake gig is slowing down, we're trying to reinvent the Mirage, the studio that's been there for 42 years. And the property value in Nevada, especially Reno, has just skyrocketed. So many people have left California and come here for all these tax advantages. Now the prices are actually to buy a house here are very comparable to San Francisco, where they were trying to get away from those prices moving here. And our building where the studio's in just got bought, and they just jacked up our rent a ton. So with the tax incentives for film, we're now looking at giving our studio an overhaul to focus on film post-production, which would require something to be able to do dialogue editing, to do a thing called ADR or looping. So when you see a movie, a lot of the dialogue has been re-recorded later in a studio because there was a bad delivery or a plane flew over during the take. And that might have been shot in a giant warehouse, but you recorded the new dialogue in a recording studio that doesn't sound like the warehouse. So you now need to be able to mix this new dialogue to match the set location stuff. So ADR is the actor coming in and lip syncing to the performance, and then the mixers have to make the ambiences match. So we're, Foley is the sound of all the sound effects. So we might add a Foley pit. So it might be another period of reinventing for me, just so we can stay in with the new in wave of culture coming into our market. We have a film festival here now that's in the top 5% of film festivals on Film Freeway, called the Cordillera Film Festival. And I was there last weekend, and every LA producer I talked to said, "You're building a post house in Reno, keep us informed." They're like, "Okay, I got to follow the flow." So in terms of, and I read this in your notes, if someone is trying to get into this industry, be it music, film, uh, audiobooks, whatever, try not to reinvent the wheel. Find what's missing in your market. So if there are 8,000 hip hop producers in your market, and you like, I want to be a hip hop producer, you're going to have a lot of competition. So you're going to have to find out what makes you special and what would make you stand out above them. Maybe you can use that hip hop knowledge base towards something else like game development or something that there isn't a big pool of and a lot of competition with. In Reno, there's no one engineer here that's really good at reggae. And I was like, man, if a reggae, and there's some like really good reggae acts here in Northern Nevada, all of a sudden, it was like that, there's a market that needs to be filled. We didn't have a rehearsal studio until 10 years ago. And I was like, if I had the money, I would have been the first person to buy a rehearsal studio and build it here, because that was what's missing in the market. So doing your homework to find out what's missing in the market makes the job of finding a home much easier. And don't reinvent the wheel.
I was going to say that's probably some of the most amazing advice, right? And it hits two skills that are so needed in the 21st century, which is adaptability and knowing when it is the time to pivot. But even further, Tom, is that entrepreneurial mindset that you have with finding where the holes are. Where is it where your expertise can shine? You don't want to be oversaturated. You want to be able to stay in your lane, but you got to know where that lane is. So,
Yeah.
in what you're talking about with like Nevada having a rehearsal studio, there's like rehearsal studio where a local band can come in there and practice, but then there's also taking it to that next level when you have like a Lady Gaga or someone who's got a huge production and
Yeah.
having a large enough room where you can do that. Obviously in LA they have to have that.
Yeah. That's
uh
made in LA. Right. Exactly.
right, but knowing where your market, that's where and I love, even in the reggae, you've got a huge reggae festival there, the 3rd through the 5th,
Right.
Reggae Rise Up. So if there's any acts you need introductions to, I got relationships in that reggae realm.
Oh, no kidding. That's very good to know.
Yeah,
Well
yeah,
done.
yeah,
Well
for
done.
sure. I can scratch the back for you. I got you.
Well done. Thank you.
So so talk me through teaching and the award that you were given for the work that you're doing, and maybe some mentors. You're obviously the mentor to them, but is there anybody that comes to mind that has kind of gone through your classes and then gone on to do the amazing style work that you're doing?
Well, we do not have a degree program yet. We're developing it. So all my classes that I've been teaching have been electives as part of the music school. And we do have a music industry minor, but a lot of them have, um, only recently are getting out there and making splashes. So I have a few. Or there's one EDM DJ that goes by the name Subdocta, who's toured the world, who is like killing it. Who's one of my former students. You guys may have heard of Sweetwater. One of my students ended up being one of the lead techs at Sweetwater, and so working with A-level stars. The only one, Garrett Raffinelli and the Aaron, was in LA working with like on some of the Katy Perry songs and stuff like that. So a few of them are getting there. One former client of mine who ended up was going to take my class but moved to LA earlier, ended up being a co-writer on I Kissed a Girl, for her. So it was like, so we've had some of them getting out there slowly but surely. We have, ironically, an incredibly strong jazz community here, because in the 60s we had live showrooms in all the casinos. So the likes of Diana Ross could come here and have a live orchestra playing behind them. And it was a place for people who were touring musicians in the 60s and 70s to actually have steady work and buy a house and start a family. So Reno has an enormous amount of talent per capita, because either those people are still alive or they've had very talented offspring. And one of the jazz people has blown up quite big, a guy named Brian Landris, who's a low sax player who wins low sax awards in downbeat every year, has his own label in New York, and is out there just killing it. But probably the biggest Northern Nevada export is in classical music. There is a guy who is one of the most astonishing choral writers and conductors in the world, and is just drop dead gorgeous. His name is Eric Whitaker, and he wrote the overture for the Olympics like several years ago. And you're like, this guy came from rural Nevada? Are you kidding? And yeah, and one of my colleagues is someone I grew up with, a guy named Chris Fogel. He was at a different high school when I was at it. He ended up being the guy who recorded Jagged Little Pill for Alanis Morissette, and now has become one of Hollywood's biggest film score guys. So he did Oppenheimer, he did Black Panther, he did the last Olympics. So I have these team of people that are like, wow, we see what you're doing, Tom, and we're gonna see, we'll come in and talk when we can. I'm not that I'm friends with Eric, I don't keep in touch with Eric that much, but Chris has been an enormous help, and we're building the foundation so these kids have even stronger foundations to leapfrog from. But everyone who's finished the program that hasn't worked with a name person has been able to go out and be productive and make educated decisions on how to make quality work. And so they're actually getting gigs with casinos or touring bands or moving to Los Angeles and getting into film. I had one guy who was becoming a boom operator in Hollywood until unfortunately he passed away a couple years ago, and he was working his way up into New Line Cinema and stuff. And it was like, these people don't look like idiots when they get on a site, because we gave them the right things to look professional walking in. So it isn't about, what kind of name dropping are you doing? It's more about, do you look like an asshole when you walk in and don't know how to mute a console where the speakers can get blown up when you walk away? And they're like, oh no, I'm protecting your speakers. It's the good habits, knowing how to wrap a cable correctly so it won't not when you unwrap it. So we've serviced a few hundred students by now. I've been teaching at the university since 2007, and we had private classes since 2004. And everyone is like, I've only grown, and I've been able to be more effective in whatever environment I'm in. And so they may never make a career out of it, but they're getting better results doing it because they love it. And that's good enough for me.
From one instructor to another, I there's nothing better, right, than being a catalyst or a fulcrum and lifting someone up or changing someone's life trajectory just by mentorship, leadership, and giving them the tools and seeing a talent and letting them know that you believe in that talent. there's nothing better than that. So you deserve your flowers for sure, Tom. I got one last question, and then I'm sure there's going to be a few quick questions in the end. And I know people would get mad if I didn't ask you. You've seen the tape to Pro Tools. Any fear of AI, or do you see AI as something, as a tool that can assist what you want to do?
The AI saved my butt last year here. Um, we had to remix an album where the multi-tracks were lost. An album recorded in 1977, the 2-inch masters have been missing for decades. And we had set a precedent of having to remix every album for these box sets, and we had no access to the multi-tracks. And we were working with we were trying to get in with Peter Jackson's people, who had created a AI unmixing software called Mal for the Beatles Get Back project in New Zealand. And I even talked to the developer of that software, who trained Peter Jackson's people at the University of University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana. That's what they did during COVID, was invent stem separation for that project. It's a very long, complicated version of it that has no artifacts, because they have exact models that they're trying to extract. So it's like, here's a recording of the Beatles, here's a recording of Paul McCartney's voice, remove that. And here's an exact model to look for. Where if you were using the over-the-counter stuff, it's like, well, here's a recording of the Beatles, and here's a sample of several male vocals that may not be exactly like Paul's, but it'll get most of it out, but there might be some digital artifacts. So we were getting artifacts left, right, and center. We couldn't get a clean stem separation. So we spent 2 years working with other developers, since we were ultimately told the Beatles people could not help us because we weren't the Beatles. So all these other people who are coming at the same problem at different angles using the new AI engines got us home. And we had to combine the output of 7 different AI generated stem separation softwares until we got something usable, and then hide the artifacts with overdubbing other instruments, adding plugins to reamp things. So AI completely saved my ass. 2 years ago, I know in the right application, it's the most powerful tool you can ask for, and it's not going away. But there are people who are very scared, like the mastering engineers, who are like, oh, well, I can just upload my file and have it mastered AI in 5 seconds. Yes, it'll be loud. It will match the volume standards of what is considered deliverable to streaming platforms, but it hasn't got that human discernment yet. And that's the craft. That's ear training. And you guys are here to learn how to hone that craft. And AI is just going to become a more effective tool to the people who know how to embrace it, but will become a more effective threat for those who are running away from it.
What an amazing answer, and a great example as well. And I think, coming back to just piggybacking off what you're saying, we always talk about finding jobs. You had that skill to be able to do that at Granny's house, so you got that job, right?
Very
And
fortunate.
we always talk about jobs where you need 5 years of experience. Again, if you know AI and you can master it, you can program it, you could get a 6-figure job right out the gate with that knowledge. So I feel like technology and that AI, understanding it now, you can skip a little bit of that. I got to do 5 years at this company to put in my time. You're a valuable asset right now, and I just love that example of, it saved you in such a complicated endeavor.
Yeah. It was a lifesaver. Now, there are certain, depending on the companies you're dealing with, that 5-year criteria could still exist for other reasons. But,
Sure.
and for degrees, there are certain jobs where a bachelor's are the bare minimum, and it doesn't matter what the degree is in. You just have to have some kind of bachelor's. It's like a driver's license. It's like, well, why did I get my degree in this when I'm going to be doing with this? It's kind of ceremonial. I hate to say it, especially at the prices of what they got, but boy, I have several friends who didn't finish with me at USC Recording Arts. They got a great gig at a studio in Los Angeles, out of school before they graduated, and then they ended up trying to get a college gig years later. And since they didn't have a bachelor's, it was 20
Right.
times harder for them to get in. It was unfortunate.
I want to ask Tom, you've had a very lucrative career. You've seen a lot of change in this industry.
I wouldn't say
What's
lucrative. I don't live in this house. This is
give
DC's.
me
This ain't mine.
when I say lucrative, I say experience is
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah, yeah,
lucrative.
yeah.
The
Very,
being
very.
able to tell that Dre story is a great one at a bar or a great one at a
Yeah,
Thanksgiving dinner.
yeah, yeah.
Biggest piece of advice you would give to your younger self with all that you've experienced?
Well, actually, uh, to me, myself is don't doubt myself. There were a lot of times I'm like, I can never do that. When I remember graduating from college, it's like I never want to be a producer. I'll be an engineer working for people, but I never think I will have enough skill set to be able to sit there and critically listen to anything and say that's good or bad and make a judgment call on that, which is what a producer is. They're quality control. And turns out I ended up being great at that, and that's what people hire me for all the time now, as to be producer engineer. But in my music business class, a little spoiler: if you ever come to Reno, I'm going to give away the punchline of my last class. Um, the biggest advice, the takeaway advice to all of them is be nice. No one wants to work with an asshole. You might get the job once, but you will not get it again if you're a dick. And you end up being in the same room with people for 8 to 14 hours a day. If you're stuck in the same room with someone for that many hours a day, they better like you.
100%. And we're at that point where we've had about 500 speakers, and
Hmm.
if I could tell you how many times people who are successful come back with that's the number one, like just having someone, your degree is your degree, your school is your school, cool, but your personality will get you. It's easier to smile than to be the jerk.
Yep.
It's easier to go teach me something, ask the questions versus coming in going, I'm the hot shot, I know. um Personal skills are extremely
Yeah.
valuable, and what a great example. You're in a room there for 14 hours. You have a certain, there's really never an end time when you're producing. It's when it's done is when it's done. So you could be, like you mentioned, playing your music in the early hours because that's when it ends.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
um Tom, I just want to thank you again. You have shared such valuable skill sets that are needed to be successful. Stories are priceless. I love them. I want to wish you continued success, good health. I think you're onto something with what you guys are doing with revamping the studio. So kudos there. If you're ever interested in doing it in Santa Clarita or LA, please call me.
Okay.
I have ideas for that as well.
All
So,
right. Magic.
I appreciate you, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Breaking the
Yeah.
Biz.
Thank you, everybody. I only got to see a few of you, but I wanted to thank everyone for spending an hour of your time listening to my babble.
It's not babble, it's extremely good advice. So, on that note, everyone, have a fantastic evening. Thank you for joining us on Breaking the Biz. Tom, I'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Cheers.
Bye bye.
Bye.
As we conclude another enriching episode, we hope you found inspiration in the stories shared today. Let's take a moment to honor Yes I Can's role in bringing Breaking the Biz to life. Yes I Can's commitment to empowering young people with disabilities through education, advocacy, and mentorship shines brightly, paving paths of opportunity and dialogue. This podcast celebrates the organization's dedication to nurturing talent and facilitating impactful discussions. Breaking the Biz is more than a podcast. It's a part of Yes I Can's broader mission to amplify voices, dismantle barriers, and craft a world that's more inclusive and accessible for everyone. Each episode is a chapter in our shared narrative of progress, education, and empowerment, driven by the spirit of Yes I Can. Thank you for spending your time with us on Breaking the Biz. Continue to challenge the status quo and share stories that resonate. Until our paths cross again, let's keep transforming aspirations into achievements and infuse every endeavor with optimism. Here's to advancing the landscape of the entertainment industry, one episode at a time. I'm your host, William Felber. See you next time.